All right, let me admit everyone. Welcome, everyone. I am so grateful that you were able to pivot with me this morning as we moved our planned in-person meeting to virtual. I'm sure that you all appreciate not having to risk going out on icy roads, and we get to hear from the folks we were slated to hear from today, which I'm so grateful they were able to join. Um, we will get started here in just a couple minutes. I want to give folks time to hop on. Thank you again for joining us this morning.
Unmute. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Sue Siegel, and I'm working with Education Without Walls as the outreach coordinator. So, hello, and thank you for letting me join these meetings. I'm excited to get involved with what y'all do.
Awesome, Sue. Thank you for coming. We are grateful to have you. I love what your organization is doing, and I look forward to you being a part of the task force.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, absolutely. And I would love for folks to go on and go in the chat and just share your name, your organization, um, if you care to. And if you're new, maybe just put like a star emoji or a thumbs up emoji in your in the chat too. And we're still letting folks in. We'll get started here in just a few minutes.
Oh.
Thank you all. Keep those intros coming in the chat. People are still entering the room. All right, we will go on and get started. You might see me pausing. We still have people coming into the room. But for those of you who do not know, my name is Javane Skiba, and I have the great privilege of being the director of the New Hanover County Resiliency Task Force. And this is our first meeting of 2025. So thank you all for those of you who are part of our subcommittees for helping us get this year started strong. What I love to do as we begin a year is to take all of us through a practice of one word, choosing one word as a lens to see how we want to grow, develop, how we want our work, how we want to do our work in this new year. And this is a practice that I've done over the last 17 years, I believe. Some of you might recognize it from maybe your faith community. Some of you might recognize it as something your organization does at the beginning of the year. But this is really, I've found to be over this past 15 to 17 years, a really excellent way for me to get laser focused on just one aspect of my life that I want to see change in. It can be improvement, or it can just be really trying to be intentional about one thing instead of doing a lot of resolutions or making a lot of promises that oftentimes only add to our stress and anxiety. But one word just gives us clarity, right? And if you don't mind sharing what your words are in the chat, I would love to see what some of you are thinking about being the lens through which you'll see all the things you do this month or this year. A lot coming in the chat. Thank you all for sharing. Regulation. I love that, Addie. Justice. Love that, Peter. Clarity. Social connections. Advocate. Wonder. Oh, wow. Meade, you might have to elaborate on that. I love that. Release, bloom, balance, hope, knowledge with purpose, braving. Oh, the Brene Brown framework. Love that, Kelly. Community, intentional, attention. Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing those and continue to share them if you've not been able to yet. One thing that I want us to do is look at some words that we have that I've seen folks share in our subcommittee meetings, and these probably came up in the chat as well. But another way for us to look at this when we are talking about the work of the Resiliency Task Force, all of these things are going to contribute to us building a resilient community where everyone thrives. And I built a word cloud in a tree, and the tree is not random. I built it just so for us to start to overlap our understanding of how us taking care of ourselves is a best practice, right? Using one word to seek that clarity in the work that we want to do is going to allow us to thrive and in turn pour into the people that we serve. This intention, this adaptability, these boundaries, this confidence, this discernment, this hopefulness and peace, this discipline. These are things that we are going to use as tools to allow us to be our best selves as we do the work of the task force in 2025. So thank you all for sharing. All in. I love that, Celine. Thank you all for sharing your words with the group. So before we get too far into the weeds, I do want us to practice a skill together. And we're going to practice two skills. One for folks who feel somewhat regulated, or even if they do need to get regulated. And then one for folks who might not be able to reach for this the first skill, okay? So we're going to practice the skill of resourcing for those who can think about this time as a resource. You know, this is day 3 of snow day in Wilmington, North Carolina. For some people, it might have had lots of joy, lots of fun. So you might think of this time as a resource. For other people, it might have brought up some feelings that were unpleasant. And so we might want to think of a highlight. And a highlight is something else that's true in the story of something that's hard. It's definitely not silver lining. It's acknowledging the hard thing, but also acknowledging that there might have been something that helped us get through in those moments. So if you want to share what your resource is, if it's just, for me, it's the brightness. On Tuesday night, I went outside with my family and it was late, but just the brightness of all the white snow and just the atmosphere I thought was really beautiful. So for me, that's a resource. If this is a challenging time, if you're a first responder and you weren't able to be in place with your family, what else was true in this moment? And you all feel free to share all of that in the chat. A resource being a warm, heated throw, time to craft, the calm and quiet sound that snow brings, Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Meditation and journaling, that could be that resource or that highlight, right? Unexpected structured time, unstructured time, doing nothing but relaxing. Yeah, sometimes having just that permission to relax because you can't go out um, can really be nourishing. My a son having fun in the snow like a little kid. Yes, that was awesome. Listening to Beatles songs, a time to recuperate. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing all of these. Slowing down a bit, taking a step outside and breathing. Now, as I read these out loud, maybe some of these resonate with you more than just what you shared. Take a moment and sense in or track how that feels physically in your body. We know that that's where our brains change when we pay attention to that physiological change around things that bring us a sense of peace or calm or well-being. So I just ask you to take 20 seconds to really track, to really sense in how that feels physically for you in the present moment. You might notice a smile come across your face. You might notice a sense of warmth in your chest or in your cheeks. You might notice some sweet tears, or you might even just notice a change in your breath or even in your heart rate. Acknowledging what might be hard too, and then sitting with the physical sensation of what helped you through. I have to lift up what Mary Mack put in the chat, comforting, then anxious as the days off continued. Yes, we can acknowledge that. What else is true in this moment? Unwinding anxiety in my belly. Thank you for sharing that physical change. Thank you, Rachel. So thank you all for practicing that with me. And I invite you to take this practice into other spaces that you might go into today and next week as we build community resilience together. I want us to kind of level set and know that we have this group understanding. A lot of you are familiar with this, but there are some folks who are new in the space. This is how we create the culture of the task force. And I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I invite you to think about why we are engaging in discussion. Some of you might be natural talkers, naturally inquisitive, without a barrier. And then some of you might be processors. You still have that natural curiosity, but you process internally first. So as we engage today, I want you to think about, why am I not talking? And I encourage that engagement. We try to create as safe a space as possible for all of our members. And then for those who are primed to share immediately, maybe we create some space and ask, why am I talking right now? So that we can open up some room for folks who might not feel comfortable leading with talking or with leading with a question. We do want to work to consensus, work towards consensus, knowing that we are not going to agree. Dissent is okay. And we do want to provide opportunities to strengthen resilience within the group. And I believe that that always starts with connection. And so we've had some time to build some connection in our space together today. This is the the image that we work from as well. As you all know, our mission is working together to prevent and respond to adverse experiences, trauma, and toxic stress, because our vision is a New Hanover County that is compassionate and resilient, and where everyone can thrive. The bridge has its faults with adverse childhood experiences, climate experiences, community experiences, cultural experiences, trauma and toxic stress. Those are those weaknesses in our bridge to getting to a resilient community. But our subcommittees, our core values, and the pillars of our work, connection, education, and action, are what are going to help us preserve and heal our communities so that we become a more resilient community. We do our work not in a linear fashion. We know that this work is a cycle over and over again of connection, education, and action, but also evaluating the work that we are doing and celebrating our wins and our movement and progress. Today, we have a great lineup, excuse me. We are going to hear a little bit about Leading from Abundance 2.0. Meade will share just a little bit of what we are planning to do, taking this Leading from Abundance into year 2. We will hear from homeless services around trauma-informed community and what we can do to support the work. And we'll also hear how we can support children of incarcerated parents. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability. This work of the task force is really important, not only here, but across the state and across our nation. And so much is happening that we have to be good stewards of this work that we have started so that we can see success and progress long into the future. So I am going to kick it to Meade for her to share a little bit around Leading from Abundance and what we have on deck for this year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, Javane and everybody. I also have Christy Aley, who's on the call with us today, and she is our outreach coordinator and has been was one of the early community resilience model trainers in this area. My gosh, I guess 5 or 6 years ago we're getting to now. But we did sit down at the beginning of last year with Javane and talked about how could we really get our partners, which we are our nonprofit partners who are on the campus and outside of the campus, to embrace resiliency for themselves and for all those that they work with and serve and support throughout the year. And so we decided to make it a full year program where we offered 90-minute certification trainings throughout the year. And then in between, we would do the exercises, like you could hop on a Zoom and just do a resiliency skill. Ultimately, we had over 30 people in the Harrelson Center community get certified for with Leading from Abundance. We created a Spotify list, which was the HC Resiliency Spotify list. So please, if you're Spotify, look it up. And that is just coming together. Everyone submitted a song that keeps them grounded and calms them or inspires them throughout the year. So it's a really diverse playlist. And so I encourage you to look that up. But so it was really fruitful, but we probably have about 100, 200 people in our current nonprofit network. So we're like, let's do it again and continue to make this a part of being a trauma-informed campus. So we are kicking off again in February. So we have partner director meetings early February, and we've already launched the schedule for the year. And but I think the important part is to have the trainings and then have the practices in between, and then have people basically become members independently and go where they want to go with creating resiliency within their organization, within their home, within their community, independently. So that is a summary. And then Christy should be on somewhere if she wants to unmute and share anything else. There she is.
Here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Meade. That was a great explanation of what we're doing with Leading from Abundance. It's our goal within the Harrelson Center, as so many of your organizations, just to help them be aware of the being able to understand these skills for themselves. We want to make sure that compassion fatigue does not set in with our leaders here in our community. And so how can they learn these skills and empower themselves, and then be able to share it with the neighbors that come through their doors, or the clients that they're seeing. And then also onboarding with organizations that have new hire and new volunteers, new interns, to be able to bring them in and weave them in with the 90-minute training and then ongoing skills. So we saw positive feedback, and the encouragement that we had with the 90-minute training and the skills. So we wanted to expand that into the second year. So we'd be happy to share this information, and as well as JVNA. So if any of you would like to spin off with this calendar that we have created for the year, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Meade, and thank you, Christy. Thank you so much. It's really been great to do this series last year, and I just think it's set such a great example for our community on the need for incorporating trauma-informed practice across a whole campus or across an organization. So I just am grateful for the Harrelson Center kind of being a pilot or a pioneer in that direction. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you so
JVNA.
much, Javene, because you just jumped right in with us, and as we knew you would, and we really appreciated that. So, and I just want to say one thing, that some of the people I sort of least expected to really step up and be like, "This was great, thank you." We did a whole awards ceremony at Cameron Art Museum with our in-person meeting, which I think was a really nice way of finishing it. Like, so we really had a beginning and an end to the process, which was nice. But I just want to add that we would love to be able to we're going to start this year incorporating more of the nonprofits from outside of just the initial partner into training. And this is just one of the facets of training. So we're going to be doing nonprofit board governance and Mondays monthly, and we're going to be doing sort of this other training with Cadence, but this is really one of the most important trainings, and you can't find it online. It's so personalized, and why I'm so excited that we're going to start all getting together in person. We got a little delayed on our first meeting of the year, but I just wanted to add that I think the most special time where I feel like I really leave reinvigorated and ready for whatever comes next is these in-person meetings. So thank you too for bringing that back this year.
Most definitely, most definitely. Thank you. All right. Well, that just really, I think, just sets the tone for all of us as we move into 2025. Part of what is great about convening regularly is the thought leadership, being able to hear about things that folks are doing, and then take that learning with us into our own organizations or into our volunteerism or our you know, being able to take this home with us as well. So thank you again. Next, we are going to hear from Andrea Stough. She is the Homeless Services Director with Cape Fear Council of Governments, and the programming that we are privileged to have today is programming that we were supposed to have in October, I believe, or September, or October, but because of Hurricane Helene and some response that we had there, we had to postpone. So I'm really grateful that Andrea was able to join us today and tell us a little bit about how we can support homeless services in our area. So Andrea, I'm going to kick it to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the invitation. I feel like I'm kind of coming back home with the Resiliency Task Force. So this has been wonderful experience for me. I'm grateful for the opportunity. So I do have a quick slide deck to keep me focused. Some of you who know me well know that's important. All right. So I am with the Cape Fear Council of Governments. We're actually a 4-county local government agency. sorry, it's been a long time since I've had to do any of this. So here we are. And so we are the lead agency for the Cape Fear Homeless Continuum of Care. And so our vision is to create a community where everyone has access to safe, affordable, and permanent housing, regardless of their circumstance. And we want to foster partnerships to create a community that reduces homelessness and, again, increases housing opportunity for everyone. Sometimes people get confused. They think the Cape Fear Homeless Continuum of Care is just me and Joe at our office, and it is actually an alliance of service providers, local government agencies. Many of the folks on this on this call are part of our COC. They're the folks that are helping move us towards that common goal of making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. We look to foster collaboration, reduce duplication of effort, and just make sure that resources are effective in reaching the people that need it the most. We have some primary responsibilities. We coordinate funding efforts. So we do have Housing and Urban Development HUD funding that comes into our area. And we have a local competition that decides where that funding goes within our COC. Again, people think sometimes that I have that ultimate goal responsibility, but that is led by a committee of folks that are non-funded agencies. So we want to make sure that we're transparent and making sure that we are doing things in a fair and equitable way. We operate a coordinated entry system that hopefully ensures access to all of our homeless response resources through a standardized practice. And then we maintain a database that helps all of our partner agencies, folks providing those direct services, track all of the services they need to do reports, to give us the ability to make really informed decisions. So this is just quickly a little bit of what we do. We just, the last week HUD announced their awards. And we went from about $507,000 that we had in our COC grant competition to this year being able to fund local projects for over $845,000. We currently fund permanent supportive housing. Rapid rehousing will be back on the agenda this year, and then our system to be able to do coordinated entry. We also facilitated an emergency solutions grant that flows through the state. And through that, we are able to award $161,000 to street outreach projects, emergency shelters, to support rapid rehousing, and again, make sure that our system's functioning. So for some of you that aren't familiar, our coordinated entry system is supposed to be very trauma-informed for folks that are experiencing homelessness. We do not want them to have to, in a time of crisis, reach out to 7 different agencies to try to get what they need. So we coordinate as a system. They can call one number and do a basic intake and assessment where they'll then be able to know what programs they're eligible for, who has openings, and how do we connect them. A lot of you know that we are at a very challenging time for homeless in our community. We have very limited emergency shelter available. Some of you know the great work of the Warming Shelter and the Healing Place and CRCI and Brunswick Partnership for Housing in trying to make sure folks stayed warm and safe over this weather event that just happened. But all in all, we have very limited availability in terms of shelter. So a lot of what we're doing and that gets frustrated for folks is trying to come up with other solutions, make sure that they are connected to our street outreach teams. A lot of what we do in this process is try to use a trauma-informed lens to really recognize that we have a lot of systemic inequities, that have contributed to homelessness in our community. We know there's mental health challenges. We know there's economic instability. We know what our affordable housing situation looks like right now. So we're aware of all of those different challenges, and what we're trying to do is really connect those folks with the people that can help maximize their strength and make sure they get to somewhere, hopefully in a rapid way. So those are some of the ways that we get connected. We also, in our database, are asked to make sure that we are making strategic decisions based on our needs and resources. So we are looking at, we are required to do reports. We're required to really take a really good lens into what homelessness looks like in our community. We are not expected to put a boilerplate solution on it. We're supposed to really get to what folks are experiencing, what our options are, and how do we best assist. So these are some of the measures we are actively reporting out on. Some of the things we know based on our system and our reporting is that we have a really high rate of first-time homelessness in our state. So the state average is 69% of folks experiencing homelessness is the first time. We know in the Cape Fear region, it's 79%. So that tells us a picture of who's experiencing homelessness, what's happening. We also know that folks that are exiting our shelters, our housing programs are by and large exiting to temporary destinations because permanent solutions are out of folks' reach right now. And again, that helps us advocate for better strategies to increase people's access to permanent housing. We also are very fortunate to know that we also track how effective our solutions are in who's returning to homelessness. So we know that anyone who entered a permanent housing destination from any of our projects, only 4% returned to homelessness within 12 months. So it does a look back period where it looks back to see, are these folks maintaining housing? Are these solutions working? One of the things we're also tasked with doing, and it is coming up next week, so if you are in a service provider or if you have a way to connect us to folks that's really important, is that over the last 10 days in January, HUD requires COCs to do a point in time count. They are asked to do a census count of folks experiencing homelessness, and it helps again let us know how to strategically plan going forward. On the left is a point in time count infographic that shows what our count looked like last year. Out of all 3 counties, we had a total of 593 people that were experiencing homelessness that we were able to survey. And of those, 46% were sheltered. So we did have a really high unsheltered population. We know that we've had one of our major shelters go offline. So we know that that certainly may play a role in that. We also asked demographic information. We asked information about whether they're a veteran, whether they self-report having a serious mental illness or need support for a substance use disorder. And then we also are tasked at looking what our racial disparities are within our system. So we look at the fact that folks that identify as Black or African American made up only 10% of our COC's total population according to the US Census, but made up 38% of our participants in the point in time count in 2024. So we want to look about what in our system is creating these disparities. How do we significantly address them? And so we'll be doing that count next week, the 28th in Brunswick County, the 29th in New Hanover County, and the 30th in Pender. It is a brief survey and it is voluntary. And again, it's just to really hopefully be able to raise awareness, push the need for continued action, and then obviously resource allocation and program development. The other thing that it allows us to do is get a really good look at where we are and where we're going and what our trends look like. Interesting part, when we looked at 2009 to 2023, we saw that our area increased in population almost 32%. And at the same time, the overall point in time numbers actually went down, but it does show a lot of reasoning as to why we might have first-time homelessness as our housing costs continue to rise. What's happening for our families? How are we connecting those folks? And then also a big part of what we do is fostering that collaboration. We have a lot of folks that work together. We meet regularly. We have a creative solutions group that is working on a safe parking initiative. We're also looking at how do we assist folks that are vulnerably housed, because a lot of our folks that have experienced homelessness, once they are housed, sometimes become vulnerable to folks preying on them or trying to move in with them. A lot of what we do is trying to combat this thought process that homelessness is a personal failure and not a system or a result of our community's decision making or just those things that we know affect folks. So that's who we are and kind of what we do. We are tasked to make sure that persons with lived experience have a voice. We know that they are the experts in this situation. We want to make sure that we are helping shape the narrative. We have a lot of issues where folks want to see things done or want us to do things as a community, but when we do propose solutions or shelters. There's a lot of backlash of, oh, I want that handled, but I don't want that handled near my neighborhood or near my community of faith. And there's just a lot of fear and stigma that come around this issue. So a lot of what we're doing in that collaboration piece is making sure that we're helping push that narrative forward. We know that folks are experiencing homelessness who are working in our school system, who are working at our hospitals. We know folks that are staying in their car with their kids, trying to stay off of people's radars. We want to make sure that their voice and their needs are being heard. So that's who we are. We meet once a month, currently virtually as a whole membership. Membership is free. And then we do have a lot of different committees that work through specific topics or issues as they arise. So if it is something that you are interested in, we obviously think resilience is a community value, and some of our most resilient folks have experienced homelessness, are experiencing homelessness, or will experience homelessness. I will put my email in the chat. You can always reach out to me. We do have a coordinated entry phone number. I think a lot of folks in the past, we didn't do a great job of framing that as it's connecting folks to service providers. They thought of it as a housing list. And as some of you know, you can't have a housing list without housing. So we do meet together to make sure folks are connected with resources, connected to the programs that are available. And when available, we do make those referrals. I tried to go fast. I know you have a packed agenda and have a lot
No,
to
that
do.
was perfect. And as Andrea mentioned, please reach out to her. She will put her email in the chat. Andrea, will I be able to share these slides with the full group?
Sure, I will definitely send them to you.
Awesome. And I will include the slides in our newsletter, which will come out next week. If you all have any questions, please feel free to add those to the chat. We'll take 2 questions. If someone wants to come off mute, feel free.
Hey, this is Sheila. I wanted to ask Andrea what that number was. In the beginning of her slide, she said there was a number that you could call.
That's a great question. I will put that in the chat as well. It's also, if I'll put our email, our website, and there is a community resource page, and there it has our number really big. It also has links to the shower trailer schedules, to our day shelters. Really tries to make sure folks that are experiencing homelessness, we know where they are or where to send folks.
Thank you. One more question, if any? Okay, well, Andrea, thank you again so much for your time and for sharing about how we, and I go back to this too, as a task force, we get to challenge that idea of not in my backyard. And I think it's so important for us to be in the know and to be connected to the work that you're doing, Andrea. So you all please do not hesitate to reach out. If any other questions surface during our time, please add them to the chat and I will collect them and share them back with Andrea. And that goes for our next presenter as well. As we listen to all of the information that we are getting today, I know that once we process, there might be questions that we have later. And as we hear from Melissa Radcliff, who is the program director for our Children's Place of Coastal Horizons, we will take a few minutes after her presentation for questions, but I do want you all to kind of keep in mind at the end of our time together after our presentations, I would love for you all to share takeaways, key takeaways. This will not only allow for me to share those takeaways in our newsletter, but it also helps direct our thought around trauma-informed, resilience-focused policies, practices, and procedures. So if there's something that you can identify in what you've heard, what you have already heard and will hear today, please add that as a key takeaway. It would be great. There are about 52 people on the call. If we came away with 52 key takeaways that I can synthesize and put in our newsletter so that we know that we are at least all on the same page. And we're continuing to build our knowledge base for how we see services, programs, initiatives in our community, and how it really aligns with the work that we're doing. It might be that you're serving on a subcommittee and you see parts of what is presented in our meetings aligning with some of our work that we are doing in the subcommittees. So just hold on to those key takeaways to share out at the end of the meeting. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time to be here this morning. I know it's been a little bit of a up and down week in terms of the weather, and I was really excited to see all of you in person, but I appreciate the fact that we have that virtual option. I am going to do a share screen in just a second, but one thing that I do with every group I speak to is if you feel comfortable and you can, will you turn your camera on and just do a little wave or a thumbs up or a smile? I don't know about you, but I feel like we are still talking to way too many screens these days, and it's just nice to see faces. Thank you for humoring me. If you can't turn your camera on or you don't want to, still wave or thumbs up or smile, because I always feel like you can still feel that through the screen, right? Now, if you want to turn your camera off, that's fine, but I love to just see faces and know that I'm actually talking to people and not just little boxes on a screen. So hold on just a second. I'm going to do a share screen and we will get things started. And then just hoping that someone can give me a thumbs up that you can actually see that PowerPoint. Great. Okay. So good morning again. My name is Melissa Radcliff, and I'm here today to talk about a group of children that oftentimes are overlooked in conversations when we ask the question, what are kids dealing with? And it's children who have a parent who's incarcerated or returning home. So just in terms of a couple sort of housekeeping items, to answer the question, I will share the PowerPoint afterwards, because I know there's what I think is a lot of really good information here, but there are some links and some information that I think folks will want to go back to after. So I will definitely share the PowerPoint afterwards. The other thing is I always think of this as the start of the conversation, but not the end. I feel very fortunate that we have a bit of time here this morning, but this is a potentially big topic. And so I don't want you to think that once we're done here this morning, this is the end of the conversation. I really hope that you will think about, whether it's within the task force or in your own individual organizations, how to continue the conversation. What does that look like? Is there a role for us in continuing that conversation? The other part of this is that I am not coming to this from a clinical perspective. So I'm not coming to you as a social worker or mental health professional. I'm coming to you as an advocate. And I'm going to ask you to do something here this morning, which you're probably already doing, but is to put on your advocacy hat and ask the question, when we think about all the things that children are potentially dealing with, is parental incarceration on that list? And more times than not, it is not on the list. And so my challenge to you is going to be, is if you haven't been thinking about this, can you start? And if you have been thinking about it, can you invite someone else to think about it? And can you up your game just to think about this in even a broader context? But with all of that being said, I know with a group of, as we just heard, 52 folks here this morning, that statistically someone here in this virtual room has lived experience. Someone can say, I had a parent who was incarcerated growing up. I still have a parent. I'm caring for a child. Or I know what's going on in my family, in my community, in my extended family, and I'm concerned that we are facing this in the near future. So I do a little self-care reminder that I don't want to suggest that anyone forgets about their personal experience, but I know when folks come to a professional development opportunity, that that's what the focus tends to be. So what I always do is, if this is too much, if hearing my voice, having this conversation, seeing words on a slide, that if it is your personal experience and you need to take a break, I hope you'll do that. Turn your camera off, step away from your computer. I hope you'll rejoin us. But I've had folks in person and virtually say, wow, I wasn't expecting to have that reaction. So I do that as a little self-care reminder. The other thing I'll share with you is a tagline from a group in Europe. I won't go into all the details about it, but I always share their tagline. And for them, the way they get the word out and raise awareness and think about providing support, the tagline is "Not my crime, still my sentence." And that really, really sticks with me. And I share it with every group as just a little bit of a reminder about thinking about the children. We oftentimes have to think about children and their parents. They often travel as a team. But if we think about what the children need, because the reality is it is not their sentence, and yet they are feeling it's not their crime, sorry, but they are feeling the impacts of a sentence that applies to them. So not my crime, still my sentence. So I love the fact that you were asked to think of a list of 52 takeaways, because it actually ties in quite nicely, and that was not planned. So I will talk about the left in just a second. The right, as a stapler, is just a reminder to let you know that there are quite a few resources in this PowerPoint, but I also have a lot of other resources. So if there's something that we don't talk about or you wanted more information, let me know. Happy to send it to you. And I have that little reminder about this, that you might be thinking about your group, the folks you work with, whether that's children, families, adults, but then also to expand it, because you may think, well, I actually could use resources for an entire family, not just a child. Or reminder that sometimes we're working with folks, the other adults, our coworkers, our boss, our staff, who are having this and dealing with this particular situation. And so it may be that we're looking to provide some resources for them. So left-hand side is your homework assignment. Now, if we were in person, you would get a little half sheet of paper. It might be green, it might be some other color, but this would be your homework assignment. And I will tell you that I give a homework assignment to every group I speak to, because I want folks to start thinking about taking action. As I said, I think I'm going to give you great information in the next 15 or so minutes, but I want folks to then to think about taking action on it. And I was pretty bold. I said 4 things in the next week, and you might be thinking, wow, there is no way I'm doing 4 more things in the next week. My dad always said, make them say no. So maybe 4 is unrealistic for the next week, but could you do 1 thing by Valentine's Day? Could you 2 things by the start of the summer, 3 by the start of back to school, 4 by the end of the year? You decide, but thinking about taking action. Now, I think you're fortunate. The first one is somewhat done for you already. Hopefully nobody's on Facebook this morning, but know that I posted this morning that I would be speaking here today. I post every time I speak to a group, but I also post if there's new research that's out, a new book that's been published, and I also post around what I call hallmark moments. So I post around holidays. So in a couple of weeks, I will post about Valentine's Day, and in particular, the love between children and their incarcerated parents, something that we oftentimes don't think about when we talk about Valentine's Day. So that little purple flower towards the upper middle right is actually a reminder of homework. So you'll see a couple of slides with that little purple flower for you to say, oh, that might be our homework assignment. And I love the fact that it could tie into a list of 52 takeaways. So our children's place, we are based in Durham, which is why the Durham Bulls logo is up there. If you are a minor league baseball fan, that's where I'm sitting right now, is in Durham. We do work statewide, and I'll share with that in just a second, actually the next slide. And then we are part of Coastal Horizons. I know everybody knows Coastal. I don't need to go into a lot of explanation, although I will say, because people often ask, we merged with Coastal about 8 years ago, and it's the reason why a group in the middle of the state has the word Coastal and Horizons in their name, because people often wonder how a group in Durham can get the word Coastal in their name. That's how it happened. We are part of Justice Services, and our focus is exclusively on how communities can support children who have an incarcerated or returning parent. And we think about how do we create communities where children are recognized. So we move away from this whole thing of saying, well, not in my community, not in my school, not in my subdivision, my whatever. Instead saying, no, we all have children of incarcerated and returning parents. So recognized, supported rather than shamed and stigmatized. And I think one of the ways that we start to increase that support is our willingness to talk about it. So recognized, supported rather than shamed and stigmatized, and then encouraged to share their stories. The reality is, I am not an expert on children of incarcerated parents. The experts are the children of incarcerated parents. So do we invite them? Do we ask them? Do we encourage them? Sometimes do we even challenge them to tell us their stories? What's going on? What's working? What's not working? What's in place that's helpful? What do they wish was in place? And what do they want us to know about what it means to have an incarcerated or returning parent? Now, just like the group in Europe was very deliberate with their wording, not my crime, still my sentence, we were very deliberate a few years ago and added "and returning parents," because we really want to think about children along a continuum. Children whose parents were arrested, went to jail, possibly went on to prison, and then are re-entering, returning home, being released, whatever language we use, recognizing that that varies from family to family. Children may have a parent who's coming back to live with them, back living with them for the first time, a parent who's going to live somewhere else temporarily or permanently. So recognizing that returning can vary significantly from family to family. So how we spend our time, where our focus is educating professionals. And what I say to folks is, I'm not telling anyone how to do their job. Folks were doing amazing jobs pre-COVID, got us through, and are still doing amazing jobs. So it's not my job to tell anyone how to do their job. I just want to make sure that professionals, in particular those who work with children and families, have some tools, have some resources, maybe have even thought about this ahead of time. Human nature is we don't think about it, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have someone in front of us who's dealing with a particular situation, and we panic and say, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do. How do we say, let's think about that ahead of time, so that when you have a child who discloses, or you learn, that you can say, hey, we have some resources. We've talked about language. We know what our response is going to be. So if you click on invite, it will take you to a map on our website. I call it our Where's Waldo map. It is a county map, and we have colored in every county we've done a professional workshop in. It needs to be updated. Someone is in the process of sending me some counties that we've been in that are not colored in there, but might be a homework assignment. If you look at the map, and if you're in New Hanover, it's hopefully already colored in, but if you look at other communities that you have a connection with, if it's not colored in, let's talk about how we can come in and do an in-person or virtual or hybrid workshop for folks there. The second part of our focus is on supporting relationships, and I can talk about this all day. I won't, but just know that there's a lot more to be covered. I will just share with you briefly, we are back doing Parent Day at some of our prisons, not all of our prisons. We have 4 that are on board. We're hopeful in the spring to get a few more to make the leap. Those are extended visits where children come in. We bring arts and crafts, a book display, a photographer. They eat lunch together. They decorate cookies together. It's a way to focus on that relationship between children and their incarcerated parents. It's also, in many cases, a time when parents are close to leaving. So it's also a chance to think about this from a reentry perspective. What is your relationship going to be with your child once you're released? The second part is that we have a grant with the state. It's called FRESH, Family Reentry Support and Help. It has us in 5 prisons doing parenting classes and case management. But it also has allowed us the chance to work with 14 prisons across the state, including New Hanover, to redesign their visiting spaces within the prisons. There was money attached, so prisons have made some pretty significant changes. We did site visits. We helped them with a checklist. We helped them figure out the best ways to make their spaces more child-friendly. And then identify and promote. This is how do we broaden the conversation? How do we think about all the adults in a child's life who could be part of their village, part of their team, part of their support around having an incarcerated parent, including the incarcerated parent if it's safe and appropriate. So broadening the conversation, not thinking it's just the school social worker. It could be a whole bunch of folks at the school. It's not just the individual after-school provider who leads my group, my class. It could be anyone at the after-school program. So broadening that conversation. So here are questions that I'm not going to go through. I'm just going to point them out for you to come back to, but just thinking about how we're gathering information, some questions that you might think about asking, but also thinking, if we ask the questions, what do we offer in return? Are we simply asking questions to check a box, or are we able to say to families, thank you for sharing that, here's what we have to offer? The last one I want to point out, because I want to spend just a minute on, is thinking about what parents need. But let's broaden that and say, what do caregivers need? So it could be the other parent, grandparents, foster parent, but it could also be the incarcerated parent. Are there resources we could provide incarcerated parents in their role as parent in order for them to continue to be engaged in their child's school life? Lots of opportunities there. They definitely take more work. Would happy to talk to folks afterwards to brainstorm. But children who have an incarcerated parent, those parents are entitled to be part of IEP meetings at school. They could be part of a parent-teacher conference or a meeting with someone else that the child is working with. thinking about how to make that happen. Quickly to look at some numbers, nationally, we're talking about 2.7 million children. I don't know about you, but I do not know what 2.7 million looks like because I don't have 2.7 million of anything. But I do know what 1 in 28 looks like because I imagine a classroom. And right now I'm here in Durham. Schools are delayed opening, but let's say it's Friday afternoon, those classrooms are full. There's a classroom with 28 students, so all the seats are full. And I imagine that one child has an incarcerated parent. But I think about school this morning, right? Classrooms are empty till we're waiting for the ice to melt. But in that empty classroom, I imagine there's a seat that is filled and that child has an incarcerated parent. So purple flower might be, what does that look like in New Hanover? What does that look like if we did some quick math for our school systems? This is an ideal time. You have good enrollment information for the fall. If you do some quick math, what does that look like? And the reason I encourage folks to do that is people know their schools. They went to a school, their kids are in that school, they drive by that school, they're going to a basketball game there tomorrow, they know the schools. And if you did some quick numbers, you could say to folks, it's not only 2.7 million children, it's 2.7 million children and 103 in our school district, because then I think it brings it home for folks. It's not just this big, overwhelming national number, it's also what's happening in our community. We're very fortunate here in North Carolina. The Department of Adult Correction, the folks who run our prisons, run an annual report for us. It's essentially a point-in-time count, and that's that almost 21,000 number there. They ask the men and women who are in prison on a certain day, usually end of January, how many children, how many minor children they have. So it's a self-reported number, which has a whole set of issues with it. But of the number they self-reported, that's where that almost 21,000, that's the number of children. So probably the next week or week after, I will ask them for some numbers for 2025. We've been tracking this number for about 10 years. It went down during the pandemic, which makes sense. People were being released, but it has been creeping back upwards. I always say it's the best number we have, but it's not the best. There are lots of reasons why children are not included in that number, but it's the one that we use to start the conversation and to recognize. The other thing at the bottom, the NEKC Foundation, there's a link. They encourage folks to think about how many children have ever had an incarcerated parent. And I encourage folks to think about that as a reminder that just because the incarceration is over doesn't necessarily mean the impacts are over. Child might have a parent who's come home, but the parent now has a felony on their record, having a hard time finding employment or housing because that, parents who cycle in and out of jail and prison, and then for some children, parents are facing deportation. So again, the incarceration might be over, but the impacts oftentimes will continue. I remind folks that this for me is the most sobering slide in this PowerPoint. This takes that 1 in 28, which we tend to toss around as sort of the catch-all number, and this now looks at it based on race, which changes the conversation completely. The Osborne Association out of New York runs a national campaign called See Us, Support Us. It's linked there at the bottom so you can learn and read a little bit more about this. But this is one I hope folks will come back to and look at and say, what does the conversation look? It's not just 1 in 28. It looks very different if we look at it from this perspective. To lighten things up just a little bit, I want to talk about a couple of resources, Sesame Street being one of them. Again, potential homework assignment. A few years ago, Sesame Street launched a toolkit and a new Muppet. His name is Alex. He's that orange Muppet in the middle of your screen with that shock of blue hair, and his dad is in jail. And so they introduced a toolkit. It's in English and Spanish. It's for children 3 to 7, 3 to 8. We've used it with older children and just said, I know you're too old for Muppets, but really good way to start a conversation, to talk to children about the support they may need. But I also think it's a way to help friends be good friends, because it might be that I don't have an incarcerated parent, but I'm trying to help my friend and I don't know how to do that. So there's also there's a DVD or a video that goes with it where the friends learn a little bit more about how they can be friends. So if you're interested in the Sesame Street kit, let me know. You can put it in the chat or send me an email afterwards. Happy to send it off to you. I do need a physical mailing address, so either a post office box or that little box at the end of your driveway, and I can do home or work. It's entirely up to you, but I'm happy to share it with folks. And again, it is in English and Spanish. And I will tell you in this video, that's available online that it goes with this. You meet at the very beginning, you meet Sophia, who is a non-Muppet. She is a human, and she tells Alex that she can appreciate what he's going through because her dad was in jail. And about 3/4 of the way through this little video clip, he comes to her and says that other kids are teasing him. They're saying things like, oh, you're going to be just like your dad. You're going to go to jail. And she said, Alex, I hope that stops. But if it doesn't, I hope you'll come tell me or another adult. And that is my favorite phrase, or another adult, because that's us folks, right? Imagine if the Alex of the world realized, oh, it's not in person today. Here's the Zoom link. And they Zoomed, logged on, and looked around the virtual room and said, oh, here are the other adults. Here are the people I can go to. I can ask questions, who are there to support me and who understand that I love my mom 100%, even though she's in jail. But I'm really mad at her today because she's going to miss my basketball game again tomorrow. So thinking about how we can be or another adult. So just a couple of quick more resources. This is actually a 2-for-1 slide. It's a screenshot of our homepage. There's the Bill of Rights on here, not a legal document. You can't be held accountable if you don't follow it. And you might look at it and say, wow, not going to do 8 more things. We can't take that on. Can you pick one? Is there one thing on here that's your thing? Number 4 is I have the right to be well cared for in my parents' absence. My guess is you are here today because you are all about children being well cared for. How do we take that and add that next layer? I have an incarcerated parent. My parent is absent, but I still deserve to be well cared for. I also think this is a great conversation starter. The second part of the 2-for-1 is this is a book list on our website. There's 4 of them, also in the process of being updated. Think about how you could use that. Could you purchase some of those books to have for families? Could you share the book list with them? Could you check in with the library and see what they have? Could you check in with schools and see what the school librarian or media specialist has? I won't put a book on any of these lists unless I've read them. And so I've read a lot of books. Not all of them are good. Not all of them are the best, but I won't put a book on there unless I've read it. So if you're looking for some recommendations or you have recommendations, let me know. I'm happy to add because I'm not going to assume this is an exclusive or all-encompassing list. It's the one we've put together. I mentioned just a couple of slides ago about that CS Support Us campaign, another resource I want to share with you. It happens in October. The site stays live year-round. So even though we're past October, you can still look at it. The focus changes slightly from year to year. This one I really like because it's talking about ending stigma, focused on misinformation that's out there. Some of that ties into statistics that we just toss out. So really good resources here. I linked at the bottom, but also there are several toolkits that you might be interested. There's one for the education world. There's mental and physical health, reentry, the importance of language. So resources that might be helpful in a particular setting. And I should say that all of the resources are either created by or have a lot of input from youth with lived experience. So it's not just a group of adults sitting around a room saying we should have this. It's youth saying, hey, we think you should make this tweak or add this or take that out or change that. So I want to tie back into what you heard to begin with about 52 takeaways, which, gosh, wouldn't that be amazing? But also I'm going to give you one homework assignment. There are 4 parts. You decide which block you fit into. So who do you want to share this with? With 50 plus people here today, someone has someone that's whirling in your brain. You're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to make sure that person is part of this conversation. But you may be a person who says, wow, I just need to sit with this for a bit. This was more than I expected. This was great information, something for me to think about, but I need to just sit. That's my box. Or you might be thinking, you know, I have someone in mind, someone down the hall, virtually or in person. I'm going to take this to them because I think there's something we can do about this. Maybe not today or tomorrow, even next week, but in the near future. Or you might fit in the box and say, boy, I'm going to run. I know exactly what I'm doing with this, who I'm going to, because I feel like we could start doing something about this immediately. So you think about what box you fit in there. And then except for a carrier pigeon, these are all the ways that you can get in touch with me. I've tried carrier pigeons. They're not very reliable. So you might want to try one of these other ways. But I mentioned earlier about starting the conversation, but not ending here today. So if you would like to continue the conversation, whether it's task force wise, whether it's subcommittee wise, whether it's something else, let me know how we can help, what that might look like. But again, here are all the ways that you can get in touch with me. So I appreciate the chance to be here this morning. Again, I know it was a little up and down type of week, so I appreciate you all making time, carving out time to be here this morning. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open to questions.
Melissa, thank you so much. What great information. I hope that I see folks are putting addresses in the chat. Everyone's very interested in that video, Melissa. And we'll open up again, as Melissa said, for questions. Maybe a couple people can come off mute and ask questions. Others can add them to the chat.
Hey, this is Sheila again. I have a couple of questions. One, you went past that slide a little quick with the culture and the race of the children. Don't know if I know you don't want to go back through it. What does statistics look like with that?
You're talking about that second slide where it broke down the 1 in 28 based on race. Okay.
Yes.
And so you're looking for some additional information around that?
Yes.
Can you be a little bit more specific? Because are you talking about like, what does that look like numbers wise?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I will tell you, so that's looking at that nationally. There are some national numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head. In North Carolina, that almost 21,000 that on that first slide, they do not break it down by race. That's not one of the questions they ask when they gather information about the children. So I'm happy to pull together some national number, but we don't have that for that 21,000 for North Carolina.
Okay.
The other thing that we don't know about that 21,000, which is that we don't know where those children live. That's not a question the prison system asks. So I can't tell you of that almost 21,000 that, 1,000 of them live in New Hanover. They don't ask that question either.
Okay. Another question I had, you talked about, you asked the children about how they felt about mothers, their parents, being jailed. What do you do with that information? How is it utilized to help the children move forward?
Yeah, so that's actually not that's a question for you to ask. That's not a question that if a child's participating in Parent Day, we might ask that question, but those are questions that we throw out to professionals to say, are these the types of questions that are appropriate for you to ask in your setting? What would they look like? But also asking the question, then what do you do with that? So it's not just, oh gosh, I'm asking that question, check, but to say, do you have something to offer in return? Because I get concerned when we do data collection that we don't have anything to offer families and we're asking them potentially difficult questions.
Okay, so that was part of the data collection.
It could be, or it could be simply that, kids are talking about what's going on in their lives or what they did over the weekend. When kids get back to school on Monday, they talk about the weekend. If one of the things that I did over the weekend was I came to New Hanover Correctional to visit my father, is anyone asking me about that? Is anyone willing to talk about that? Are folks prepared for me to say, I actually spent 4 hours with my dad in prison, or are we not prepared? In which case we probably need to get ourselves prepared to be able to respond to that.
All right. Well, thank you for your questions, Sheila. There is another question in the chat that I think is one we can discuss as a group or with Melissa is, what is the most common issue that presents itself of children of incarcerated parents?
Was that a question for me, or do you just want to open it up for conversation?
If you want to lead, and if others might, I know Yolanda Bostic might actually have some insight, and she said that she has that lived experience. So if you want to lead, Melissa, and then I can kick it to Yolanda to elaborate.
I know there was one, but I'm going to be bold, and there's two that actually come to mind. One is just that we are not talking about it. And just when I think, gosh, we must have saturated, right? We've talked to everyone across the state. Undoubtedly, I will do a workshop, in particular in person, where someone will come up afterwards and say, thank you. Nobody ever talked to me about this as a child, or I'm caring for a child and nobody's talking to the child about it right now. So the awareness, our willingness to be uncomfortable when people talk about jail and prison, I think is a huge, I say it's the top, but definitely a big issue. And then access. So there are lots of barriers to why children, if it's safe and appropriate, why they can't have access to their parents, whether it is the distance, about how far people have to travel, whether it's restrictions put on by jails and prisons, whether it's just an unwillingness on someone's part to bring a child. I think the access piece, as broad as we can define that, is another issue for children. And then parents come home, because most people come out of jail or prison, they don't stay forever. They come home, and then we're scrambling to figure out what does life look like now. And I just think if access was a bit more available and easy and convenient, that maybe there would be less on the other end when folks are getting ready to leave. So those would be my two answers.
Thank you, Melissa. Yolanda, would you like to come off mute and share a bit?
Hi, everybody. From the perspective of being a formerly incarcerated parent, one of the big things that I notice is when returning home, parents want to try to pick up from where they left off, or they're really ready to embrace their children and move forward, but they don't take into consideration that the child may not be ready, that they need more time. I can honestly say it took about 8 years after my incarceration for me to rebuild my relationship with my children. And I think that parents actually just do the child a disservice when they just come try to jump right back in. The other thing is, like you said, they're not talking. There's a lot of trauma that surrounds your parent being incarcerated. You know, like you said, they're not there for important events. They're not there to protect the child in a way that the child feels like their parents should be. And I just think that, I mean, Melissa, I am so grateful for you. I had no idea about this organization, and it is a passion of mine. I also am affiliated with an organization out of Mecklenburg County called the Dace Diamond Youth Foundation, and it was founded.
There's some sort of feedback. I'm not really sure why, Yolanda.
I got it.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to get it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so the Dace Diamond Youth Foundation was founded because the founder's brother actually was incarcerated for 33 years. And when he became incarcerated, his family was left with the task of taking care of his children. There were a lot of challenges that they did not expect. And one of those was dealing with the mental health of the children and how the incarceration affected them. I'll put the information in a chat for that foundation if anyone wants to reach out or wants any more information about it. But again, Melissa, I just really thank you for putting this out for us, because like I said, I had no idea, and I will definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much for sharing, Yolanda. I appreciate you allowing us to hear some of your lived experience. Melissa, um, I, am so grateful for the work that you're doing as well. And I hope that all of us feel a little bit more empowered now. We have resources, we have a source, a couple sources that we can reach out to. Because this is something that I think we don't talk about enough in spaces where we support children and families. And I think some of that is stigma, um, feeling uncomfortable with that sort of information. What do we do with it? How do we show a child that we are supporting them without exacerbating any pain that they might be feeling at being separated from their families? But Melissa, what you offer, what can I do? What are questions I can ask? Kind of doing a survey of self, really, that prepare me to be able to kind of walk into that gap and offer support. And as we all know, having a parent who is incarcerated is one of those original 10, what I like to call in-home ACEs. And those are things that we can do something about that. It doesn't have to be suddenly our parent is gone. Everyone around us is acting like this isn't happening, and I'm hurting and I don't know I can say anything about it. How are we being those safe, appropriate relationships, either in our scope of practice or as community members, to actually uplift, even if it's not directly supporting a child, but supporting folks who might be supporting these children, offering them these resources, giving them opportunities to develop some trauma-informed, resilience-focused skills. And, everybody, like I mentioned in the chat, Melissa, everybody wants that Sesame Street video. So, yes, anything else you want to add, Melissa, to that?
Well, I just want to echo what people are putting in the chat. Yolanda, thank you for sharing your experience. And like, I can call my day done, right? Because the fact is that that you offered that feedback was important. Thank you. And just if anyone wants Sesame Street or other materials, happy to talk further. Thank you again.
All right, and there are some other questions in the chat. For those who submitted those questions, I will relay them to Melissa, and we might include that on the newsletter, or I can send those replies directly to the General Task Force listserv. Thank you again, Melissa. We appreciate all that information. And again, as you process, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll get them to our presenters. So I feel like the content that we have gotten today has been so rich. And the richness of this content is really what the task force is all about. We are trying to de-silo, build connections, help you feel more empowered, and equip you with the skills and tools and knowledge necessary to help realize our vision of becoming a New Hanover County where everyone thrives. And the discussion always has to go back to our sustainability. And this is how each of us can ensure our efforts continue and have lasting impact. As you all know, our Resiliency Task Force is somewhat of a beacon for other resilience collaboratives across the state. Our programming, the training and consultation that we offer, how we convene and bring people together, how we utilize those pillars of connection, education, and action are really valuable, not only to us in New Hanover County, but as an example, and as a power with entity, so to speak, with others across the state. And as we think about sustainability, I conceptualize it in 3 different buckets. programming, people, which is our primary focus, but also funding. And as you all know, we historically have not necessarily contributed, or our partners have not contributed financially to sustain the task force. But if we want to continue to do the work that we are doing, we are proposing this sustainability structure, this funding structure. And this is, again, proposed. What you will find in our newsletter next week will be a survey. This is primarily for partners, so our organizational partners. So I will be sending the survey directly to our belief statement signing partners, but I will also give access to it for transparency and for understanding, and for you all to share your thoughts too as members, what you think about this proposed funding structure for the Task Force for Sustainability. We operate as a task force on grant funding. We enjoy the benefit of fiscal sponsorship, but the fiscal sponsorship is not responsible for our funding our programming, funding training and supplies, or my position. And we know from the Kellen Foundation that task forces or resilience collaboratives that have a dedicated paid staff person to lead this work are the ones that thrive. At the beginning of 2024, there were upwards of 40, I believe there were about 43 resilience collaboratives in North Carolina. 3 of those have dissolved in the last year because they did not have coordinated efforts through one person. So thinking about sustainability too, not me necessarily, but into the future, we understand that in the findings of that Kellen report, and the landscape analysis the North Carolina Partnership for Children did with their Healthy and Resilient Communities initiative, that is very important to be able to have that centralized leadership and to be able to offer as much training at low to no cost in the community around trauma-informed, resilience-focused practices. So this sustainability structure really does not exclude anybody. If you or your organization is not able to contribute financially, you are still partners, members of the task force. This would include another realm of membership or partnership that is what we would call a sustaining partner or a sustaining member. And those partners and members, partners being organizations, members being individuals, would be identified as such. Of course, it would be a sliding scale based on the organization's annual expenses. Individual membership proposed would be $25. And there would be ability for paying it forward. So larger organizations who want to contribute more to this work can help smaller organizations who might not be financially able to support. But this includes this kind of thank you package, but it's really some of the very valuable and necessary programming and training that we offer as a task force. Our Foundations of Resilience, or a 3-hour CRIM for staff, board, or patrons would be included in that thank you for contributing financially. Consultation and trauma-informed systems change or organizations, trauma-informed racial equity-oriented frameworks consultation as well, member and partner networking events, publishing all of your resilience events in our newsletter. Currently, if you submit it, we publish it. We will always share information because we want to de-silo and keep you all connected. But we will reserve our newsletter for our sustaining partners and our sustaining member information. And it would also include one premium offering per year. That would be at no cost to sustaining partners or members, but might include a cost for those who are not sustaining partners or members. And again, this really goes back to sustainability. We want to be able to offer free programming and projects and training and professional development, to the community at large for as long as we can. But that requires RTF being able to pay our trainers a stipend when we invite them to come and do work to train the community, and being able to have meeting expenses covered for that training, whether it's offering refreshments if we want to train in the evening for people leaving work, or if we want to provide childcare for parents. All of those things require dollars, and we want to be able to contribute to that. That's longevity. That is how we build sustainability over time. So as I mentioned, I'll be sharing this with all of our partners directly. So if you are a part of an organization, maybe give your leadership or the point of contact for the task force, whoever signed our belief statement within your organization. If it's not you, give that person a heads up that this is coming in the next week, and also look for it in our newsletter. So I hope that even if your organization isn't necessarily in a position to contribute, that you would consider individual membership. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please do not hesitate to email me. You can add things to the chat as well. But I have presented this to all of our task force subcommittees over this past month, and I've gotten some great feedback on the structure of the survey, some questions we might want to ask, and I've taken that and we will include that in that survey as well. Some things that are coming up, RTF Power Hour. Now, you all know that we were supposed to be in person today. All of our monthly meetings, like our general monthly meetings, all are going to be in person from here on out, primarily because we want people in the room. We want that spontaneous collaboration, networking, continuing to break down those silos. Although having the capability of being virtual is a gift, we sometimes miss those kind of serendipitous opportunities to make the work progress even more when we're not in person. And so the Harrelson Center, who was supposed to host us today, has graciously offered next Friday for an opportunity as well. So we are going to have an RTF Power Hour, Power With Hour, where we're just going to come together. If you are new to RTF, the Resiliency Task Force, we want you to come into that space. I'll give just a brief presentation on the task force just to level set you. Or if you've been a member for a while and you haven't had a sort of an RTF 101, or if you just want to be able to connect with like-minded resilience champions, we invite you to join us at the Harrelson Center in the Plaza on Princess next Friday from 8:30 to 9:30. It's going to be a tight hour, so you can come at the top of your workday, first thing, get some coffee, network, and hear a little bit more about the task force. And I'd love to open the floor up for folks who might have some announcements about things that they're working on in their organizations, things that have happened that you want to share about, or some celebrations you might have of things where you recognize we are actually building that trauma-informed, resilience-focused community. And I see, Peter, you have your hand up, so feel free to come off mute and share.
Thank you, Javene. I think I have all of the above. Next month, Love Our Children is celebrating 4 years of advocacy for the end of exclusionary discipline in New Hanover County. Our advocacy is research-based and data-driven. For 2 decades, the research has shown that out-of-school suspensions harm children. They don't improve school safety. Sadly, they disproportionately impact Black students and special education students, and there are effective alternatives to suspensions. Know that Love Our Children wants every child and staff member to feel safe and to be safe in our schools, and using effective alternatives to suspensions can make that happen. Learning and practicing resiliency skills is one of those alternatives. So we're reaching out to organizations like the Resiliency Task Force and to your organizations to support our work in February during our 28 Days of Love campaign. We're asking you to take action, to send an official letter or email in support of our work to the Board of Education. I'll include their email in the chat in a minute. You can show up or speak at the next Board of Education meeting, either on February 4th or March 4th. Those are Tuesday nights. You can show up or speak at our press conference that's on Saturday, February 15th at 11 o'clock outside the Board of Education Center, or make a 30 to 60-second video of support for social media. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much for your Love Our Children's advocacy and the work that you've done. We appreciate it. Anka, I saw your hand up next.
Yes, hi everybody. Won't have my work face on, but hey, whatever. I am, hi everyone. I'm a UNCW. I'm a nursing faculty member and a trauma clinician in the community here. I just wanted to invite the community. I'm also on the community engagement advocacy committee for the College of Health and Human Services, and just wanted to plug in for those folks who are interested in engaging with folks on campus, including our students. March 17th through the 21st, in particular on that Wednesday, which is the 19th, we're going to have a community engaged day where we're inviting folks from all places in the New Hanover region and beyond to come in and do some trauma-informed play with us on campus and trauma-informed practices. So we're really wanting the community to be present and bringing folks on campus to interact with our students, our faculty, and our staff. Another piece is, I'm not sure if people are aware, but UNCW faculty are being trained in the CRIM model. Thanks to Javene and her partnership with us through the Wellbeing and Resilience Collaborative. And Kelly Purcell has trained some of our doctoral of nursing practice students. So yay for that. And we're just trying to weave CRIM all over campus to make sure that faculty are aware of the skills and how they can utilize it, both in the classroom and out in the communities that their students are serving. So we're offering a summer institute again this summer for faculty and staff, and a trauma-informed pedagogy summer course for faculty. And this means that faculty in Watson, faculty in the School of Business, all of our colleges and on our campuses are going to be infused with trauma-informed pedagogical practices so that they're teaching it to the students who will be serving in your agencies. So we are slowly but surely trying to make an impact to move this agenda forward. So hopefully we'll see you guys in March on campus.
Thank you, Anka. I just really, we have some excellent partners, and I just think the College of Health and Human Services is such a great example, again, of integrating that whole mindset, in increasing the touch comes to mind, but I guess accessibility for these community-led, community-focused type initiatives. So thank you all so much. Emma, I see your hand up.
Hey everyone, I'm with One Christian Network. My name is Emma Baltazar, and I just wanted to share a few things about some upcoming meetings we have. So Or actually next week we had to have it rescheduled, but January 30th at 6:30 p.m. at First Baptist Activity Center, we're hosting a church school partnership meeting. We have a goal for each school to have a church partnership that is effective and that is meaningful. And so we're just kind of sharing ideas, and people who already have a partnership can come, or individuals who just want to start volunteering in schools more and want to understand what that looks like and get connected. They can come. And then we're also going to be talking about an online platform that could help match needs to resources more effectively as well, and what that looks like. And then we also have a speed networking event. We have 3 times a year networking times, and that's coming up February 17th at 6:30 at the Refinery Church. And what that looks like is just each person has 1.5 minutes with one person, and then it's just a lot of networking and just understanding who does what and knowing who you can connect with. And then lastly, I'm also on the board of the New Hannah Disaster Coalition, and our next meeting is February 26th from 11 to 12 in person at the Government Center. And it's just a good also chance to connect about preparing for a disaster. That's all I got. And I can put some of that in the chat. And also our website is onechristiannetwork.com.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you so much. Really looking forward to hearing more about that church and school partnership. I think that's really, really going to be phenomenal work. Celine, I see your hand up.
Is there a way to do a virtual hand up?
There is. If you
Where is
go into, let's see.
We can do IT later too.
There is a way. I'm not sure if it's in React. Yes, I think if you go to reactions in the
Okay.
toolbar at the bottom,
Okay.
there's a box or a button that says raise hand. It's under the
Oh,
emojis. Yes.
Okay. See, oh, there it
Yes.
is. And that's what people are doing. Okay, great.
There
My
you
hand.
go.
Okay, now I'm gonna lower my hand. Hi, I'm Celine. I'm with Education Without Walls. We merge mentorship and outdoor and adventure education. It's a year-round program. The kids go backpacking and rock climbing, surfing. And then they also meet with a mentor throughout the school year every week, and they're dedicated young professionals. We have partial and full scholarships available. And I just want to let you all know, we have partial and full scholarships available, ages 13 to 18, boys and girls. And I will put our website on the chat, and parents, social workers, caregivers, they can, on the website, there's a contact form at the bottom where it goes directly to my email in my inbox, and it's just saying, hey, I'm interested. And then I'll follow up with a phone call to whoever it is that's interested in learning more. And then we process the information from there.
Awesome, Celine. Thank you. Thank you. Any other announcements, celebrations? All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Let me look at my slides and make sure I covered everything. Because, sometimes, oh, and I needed to put this up. So we hope that you connect with us. You can follow us on Facebook. Facebook has been a little bit slow over the last couple of months because my Health Equity Bonner Fellows have been on break talking about what a great partner the College of Health and Human Services has been. I enjoy hosting 2 Health Equity Bonner Fellows who help me with the social media outreach for the RTF. So you'll be seeing an uptick as they come back and contribute to our Facebook page and also our Clear page. And for some of you who might not know, in 2020, after so much racial trauma that we experienced as a community and as a nation, some really forward-thinking RTF members came together and we built kind of a clearinghouse, so to speak, of sharing information in this group called CLEAR, which is Community Linking and Educating Against Racism. And that CLEAR page has been somewhat quiet. We did have some folks post about a great proclamation on racial healing presented by the New Hanover County Community or County Commission on African American Heritage, History, and Culture. That's one of our latest posts, but we want everyone to contribute about things that are going on in the community that dismantle racism and bring healing. It's really a spot for sharing information locally, but also any information that helps inform us on the national scene as well. And we also encourage, if you have not already, go to our website to join and subscribe. This is how we count membership. When we have you go and join and subscribe at the bottom of the homepage, that is what makes you a member of the task force. And if you are new or if you've been here for a while and you still want to learn more, our website is a really great place to get the historical information, see what kind of training we have offered in the past and what we are offering currently, and to just get a feel for the scope of the work. We have some partners who offer training that we don't necessarily offer directly, and their resources linked on the website. There will be some other things coming to the website over this next year that will increase accessibility and our connectedness with our partners and offer more resources. So be on the lookout for that as it emerges over time. But we hope that you share this with other folks. One of the things that we have been talking about too within the task force is, what is our elevator pitch? Like, how do I describe the task force? A great way is to go to our website and glean information from there. We've also produced a YRTF document for you to go and glean, and it's kind of an annual report from last year, that last fiscal year, that showed how many folks we trained and how many folks we had in attendance. We trained about 1,000 people, over 1,000 people, and we had about 750 folks attending our meetings. And in thinking about attendance, I want you all to understand how important you being in the space is. Part of the reason we want folks to be in person, well, the main reason is to build that connectivity. But also in our subcommittee meetings, that is really where the work gets done as far as most of our programming. You know, our First Responders and Justice subcommittee is working on a community response forum series. We started with an intimate partner violence simulator in October, and on February 20th, go on and save the date, we're going to have a panel on intimate partner violence, bringing the connection back to how that contributes to adversity in childhood, and how that lived experience might show up in the people that you serve, and how we as community members can actually respond effectively, hearing from and dismantling some of the stigmas around intimate partner violence. That's an example. We have our early childhood educator symposium that comes out of our childhood subcommittee. All of the work, really, we try to do in our subcommittee. So we need you there. And for folks who aren't able to make the times, make sure you're checking the notes, and just check in with me if you want to contribute, or if your organization wants to supply, food for an event, or offer expertise or some technical assistance. We want you all to think really broadly on how you all can support the work, even if you can't be present. And one of our markers that we use to submit grant funding and in our reporting is on our attendance. So, don't take for granted that you can get the notes on the back end. We want you in the space contributing as well. So we are at 10:42. I can give you 18 minutes of your time back, but I do want to thank you all so much. And please do not forget, just add one takeaway to the chat. I want to hear what you all have to say about your learnings from today, whether it's something that you learned or something that you are motivated to do now in the spirit of the task force because of what you heard today. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for the work that you do. And we will see you, hopefully some of you, at the Power Hour at Harrelson Center next Friday at 8:30. Or we will see you at our next meeting. Take good care, everyone.